Silence.
So my issue this week that I want to talk about is, you know how they say that in order to change, you have to be uncomfortable? Well, they say that, so that might not be true and you might not think that. Then is it true that in order to change other people, you have to make them uncomfortable first? Or can you do it in a different way? Because I found myself this week accidentally making someone uncomfortable, and I feel like it had the actual effect that I was trying to get the whole time. And I don't know if actually that was the right way or the wrong way. I don't know if there's another way. So do we have to make people uncomfortable in order to change?
I think by definition, change is uncomfortable, isn't it? Because you're doing something different. And by, if you're in a place of comfort, you stay in that place. So moving out of that place of comfort would, what you're saying, you're not sure about is whether that change is positive or negative, but I don't think that's the point. The point is that you're trying to move from a spot to another. And so there'll be an element of discomfort there.
Yeah, but in order to make other people change, do you have to make them uncomfortable? Do they have to feel discomfort? Do you have to? They might feel that because of their own sort of innate need to change, but do you have to set that
domino? They have to feel discomfort, because you can't make someone uncomfortable. They have to feel discomfort. You might be saying something that doesn't have an impact on them, and so they don't change. Whereas they have to, which is why a lot of people don't change in society when you try and tell them about themselves, no matter how you say it, until they feel the discomfort, and now they need to move away from that discomfort.
It also depends on, I guess, how big the change is, right? And if you're, I don't know, talking about a professional context and you want to make a culture change, that can be something that's very far removed from where people are already. So you're asking them to make a big change, which then can make them uncomfortable. Yeah, to answer, well, to explore rather your core question, I think actually, yes. And the bigger the change, the bigger the level of discomfort as well that people can experience from that. Just to kind of, I don't know, bring out the worst of it.
But are there any negatives?
There are negatives because you don't know that they're going to change in the direction you want. You can make someone uncomfortable and they go and do something in a different way that is worse than your desired outcome. So you don't necessarily get what you want. It's almost like the carrot and stick. The carrot, at least if they're aiming towards it, you can lead. Whereas if you're just beating someone with a stick, they're running in a direction and it might not be the direction you want. And so creating discomfort is something that might be like a stick, which just gets someone to move away from that place and they just settle somewhere else. And then also, just to really drag it down in terms of managing people, is you then have to create, sometimes they drift back to that place when it's comfortable again. And now you're continuously having to revisit the same situation and light a fire under someone just for them to come back to the same place. You're going to run out of gas, to use the same metaphor eventually, of constantly having to light a fire in the same spot that people just move away from when it's hot and they come back to it straight after.
Yeah, I guess it's just like synonyms as well, really, or rather just different words for the same thing. Because you talk about people being comfortable, another way you can describe that, I guess, negatively is complacent, right? And you want to stop people from being complacent. Hence, you make a change, and that change that stops people from being complacent can make them uncomfortable. So I guess it's just balancing off. I mean, obviously, you don't want to intentionally make people uncomfortable, especially people that you're working with or that are working in your organization. But at the same time, you do want to drive positive change and change behavior. So it's just that balancing act, and how do you get it right?
Well, then you just said that you don't want to make people uncomfortable, but is that, I guess, the
idea of it, in its essence, you don't want to do anything that negatively impacts on people, but at the same time, you
shouldn't have to, or you don't want to.
I don't know, I disagree. I feel like you shouldn't want them to only take that from it. I think if you look at any coach in any sport, which is an easy way to look at it, a lot of the conditions that they're putting on someone to get them better and prepared for performance is to make them uncomfortable. Whether that's prior training, whether that's putting them in extreme situations in that sport, say, how would you react if you do this? And in a sense, you almost want your workforce to be the same as how do you respond to this? You put them in training situations where the level's above what they're used to, so that they can go and execute when it matters. And so I think you want discomfort, but you don't want it to be that person's only thing they draw from it. What did you learn in training today? Just painful. Then it's pointless. You want it to be, you want to have a carrot on the other side, or something almost like You want to show how something is more comfortable after you go through the process. My brother would always say, and lots of people have said, I'm sure, everything's hard, but you have to pick your hard. It's really hard to get into the gym and work, but it's hard to be unfit and get older and struggle with that lack of fitness. So pick your hard. It's hard to get a job and work and make a lot of money, but it's also hard to not have money and to struggle. So it's almost like, easy to say, but it's almost like, which hard do you prefer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good, okay. So I don't know, we've necessarily come to a conclusion, but actually perhaps a shift change requires some uncomfortableness.
You have to be prepared, though, I suppose, if you're talking about still the negative aspects of it. They're not necessarily negative as far as the outcomes, but as far as how you deal with them and what you need to prepare for. It's prepared to be the bad person at that moment before it's seen. Like raising a child, they're not going to know why they can't have that ice lolly every time. And at that moment, you have to be prepared to be the bad guy, so to speak. And so sometimes that's going to be the case. Sometimes you're going to be wrong. Sometimes you're, like you say, you're going to have to keep revisiting the same scenario, and you think you fixed the problem, but all you've done is move someone away from it whilst you're watching, which isn't good either.
And I think that's, sorry to jump in. I think actually you touched very briefly on something that's really important. Not every decision that you make is going to be the right decision. So sometimes you are causing discomfort, you know, you're messing with people's equilibrium. And then, you know, you don't even get the results that you want. So that can have obviously knock-on effects as well, where people say, oh, you know, I went through all of this, or you did all of that, or you told us to do this. And, you know, look, you know, what was it all for? Which can lead to
lose people in that term, can't you? Because some people go with you, some people recognize it, and you're always at risk of losing people if we change.
And on top of that, sorry to jump in again, sometimes the discomfort can be too much, right? Sometimes the gap between where too much for certain people. So I mean, one that I've often struggled with different people, depending on where they're at, is I like to work quite tech oriented. I think is the most efficient and effective way to do a lot of things. Some people by default, that's really kind of not how they do things. So I'm often trying to convince people to, you know, use the more tech oriented system. And a lot of people, when they eventually get round to it, will see its benefits. For some people, that gap is just too much. I cannot do it. It's too painful for me. It's too far removed from where I am. So it's like you take them through that uncomfortable period, and you know, they're not even able to finish the journey. They just went through that discomfort and then found out it was too much, and then you didn't even get to the other side where they were able to reap the rewards of that journey. So yeah, sometimes it can be too big a gap for people to traverse.
Yeah, you're right. You've got to know whether it's worth it, whether they're going to actually get there in the end. Okay, so if I could have a radical solution or suggestion, I suppose, in this circumstance, and a sensible one when it comes to change and whether we need to make people uncomfortable.
I suppose if the radical solution is when you do a sea change, you do it the whole way. You don't do it half-hearted. You go in the direction you're going. You don't look back. You try and bring people with you, of course, but anyone who can't make it is no longer part of what your plans are. They've got something better for them somewhere else. And so it's quite hard. Even in terms of what Charlie just said, if you need to be a tech-based company and there's people who want to use their paper diaries, they might need to go somewhere else and use their paper diaries. So it's radical, but it actually might show people that this is how we do things here, and we're not turning back.
HR has entered the chat. Possibly. To be honest, yeah, I think maybe a version of that, especially where some people may struggle to, if you're going to do it step by step to make the whole journey, is also to do something similar, but to say, look, everyone is mandated to trial this for a 2-week period, you know, and for that 2 weeks, you have to use it, and it's going to be painful and but hopefully, I guess the aim is by the end of that 2-week period, they would have seen the benefits of using a different system or approaching things a different way, or, you know, embracing a different culture, that by the end of it, they would have got to the other side of the bridge, so to speak. So basically a trial version of what Deola suggested.
And that's interesting, because, sorry, just to add, one thing we've done in our company is have picked certain people to trial it, and they can bring that practice of the end result to everybody else and say, this worked for me. And so you
Mhm.
don't want everybody trialing it and it being painful. It's you pick the people who are going to be the leaders in it, and then they can come and report back to the rest of the team.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
All right.
Thanks for my
See
help.
you later.